what does a beautiful future look like to you?
You can flip a negative mood on its head.
This was a talk that was all over the place, but then New York, you are all over the place.
There are experiences that you just don't get anywhere else.
Okay, so I'm super excited to talk to you, Richard Tanne, and Mr. Austin Abrams about your new film, Chemical Hearts, which is a coming-of-age story between two kids who are dealing with lightness and darkness and everything in between of high school and themselves, right? And, you know, Richard, when you first texted me and you were like, oh, would you want to moderate this? And I would do anything for you, Richard. You're one of my favorite directors, and obviously did Southside with you together. And when you said, you know, it's a YA movie, and I was like, my first thought was, oh gosh, I'm gonna be rolling my eyes most of the time. Okay, it's a high school story. I don't know what I really remember about high school and that feeling. But what I came out of it with was, while it's a youthful story, it feels very lived in and mature, right? But in the best way ever, because I think sometimes what happens is sometimes YA plays into the tropes of thinking a lot of young adults are not as smart as that we think that they actually are, and they're very smart. And I felt like it hit a lot of moments with myself, and I was so excited when I finished watching it. So Richard, I'm really interested in, because you're a very thoughtful director. What about this story, which was started as a novel, right? It's called Our Chemical Hearts. Mm-hmm. What about this made you want to adapt it, because you wrote it and directed it? So what attracted you to it? I'm really interested to know that.
Well, first of all, I have to thank you for doing this. You know, it's amazing for me because I get to be with two of my most favorite collaborators in one virtual setting. and I haven't seen you in a while, Tika, so it's good to see you.
I know.
But I think what really pulled me in was something that you already alluded to, which was the darkness of the book, of the story, of the separate and shared journey that Grace and Henry were on. I really related to, the crossing the threshold from adolescence into adulthood through a prism of pain and tragedy. I think that in one way or another, either directly or indirectly, when we're young, we all encounter those sort of adult emotions for the first time, those adult situations. And so on top of the fact that for me, it was really a story about heartbreak, not about first love, because, I'm not even sure that Henry really loved Grace. I think he thinks he loved Grace. But it's about heartbreak, but it's also about loss and grief and tragedy and mortality. And I thought that, I didn't really think that much. I was just more compulsively drawn to it and to write it. But when I think about why, I think it's because I like the idea of telling a story about love through death in a weird way. It spoke to that 16, 17-year-old version of me that was kind of feeling down and feeling a lot of pain and understanding the pain of the world for the first time.
Right. And Austin, I have to say, you played Henry, so it was like a subtlety, but super awkward, but that awkward, everybody knows what high school is. And
yeah. Nice.
It was just so beautifully, but not contrived and weird and oh, you're trying to be brooding or awkward. It felt very lived in as a young kid, just trying to figure it out.
Okay.
For you, one, what attracted you to, you know, even come in to audition for something like this? And what was that process like for you? And then once you got the role, like how involved were you able to be in really creating this human that was already on paper, but like that you had to, you know, figure out, how am I going to be this person?
Well, thank you for saying those things. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I think what attracted me to him is there's like a lot of, he's a fairly vulnerable person in a lot of ways. And I found that like very attractive and also, I think challenging to like attempt to portray, because that can especially be the, I don't know, quite a scary thing when you got all those cameras on you and the crew everywhere, and then people are gonna see these things, you know. But like it needs to be like fairly vulnerable, and that was an interesting challenge. And also he's just like a very like complex individual, and then also it's cool to watch him change throughout the movie. You know, that's fun, and that's also challenging, like accurately portraying that through each scene, because it needs to grow through each scene to be like genuine, I suppose. And so that was an interesting draw. And I mean, you don't find, I don't know, it's almost like I don't want to like offend someone that is maybe in their teenage years at the moment, but I just feel like at least some of the scripts I've read, like you don't end up finding all the time teenagers that have like too much going. I mean, it's just you
kind of really fleshed out.
Well, yeah, you just haven't lived enough like life yet. A lot of times, I mean, there's some obviously. I mean, I think there's some kids that have lived, who because of whatever circumstances that they were born into, have lived many lives in a way, like, you know, by the time they're a young age. But, you know, I think most of the time there isn't. And, you know, at the same time, he kind of hasn't really. But he does, like, in the movie as you're watching him. So I don't know. It was just interesting to portray. What was your next question?
It's okay. This is literally you on panel.
Yeah, no.
At the end, I'm like, wait, what?
These are my tangents that I go into. I forget that I can answer a question a lot shorter.
Dude, it's all good. How did you and Richard work on your character together, or you know, how did you feel about that process? How did that work with you, Lili, and Richard, like working on this relationship together and by yourself?
Yeah, I love that process. I mean, Rich is awesome. I mean, I'm sure you know he's like a very collaborative director. He was very open to, I didn't feel like I was like, you know, because sometimes you'll go into a project and the director's like, no, this is what it is and this is what I like. And obviously Rich does have, I mean, he does know where he's going, which is wonderful and which is what you need from a director. Like you need a director, literally.
With a vision.
But, yeah, exactly, with a vision. But he's also like was very collaborative, and it felt like I was coming into someone that could be a partner of sorts. So it was a very like I felt collaborative process, and between Lili as well. You know, we all tried to like work on it to make the script as best as possible.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Richard, how did why was it important? One, you shot on film, right? Which was beautiful, but you know, nowadays that doesn't happen as much. Why was that important for you to do that?
Yeah, you know, when I was growing up and a teenager, the movies that I watched were all shot on 35 millimeter film, Super 35. And they had that, you know, textured, grainy, quality, that the beautiful imperfection that comes from the chemical process that the celluloid has to go through in order to be developed. And it's pretentious, but it's like that was too good of a connection not to try to pounce on. And so I went in when I had meetings about people financing the movie and studios and stuff. I just was talking 35 millimeter from the get-go. Just, I'm going to start getting this into people's heads now that it's less of a battle later on. And same thing with like shooting in New Jersey in my hometown, and, just things I knew.
I saw that.
Yeah. Just things I knew I needed to as atmosphere to add to the experience of the movie. And it didn't work. I mean, it was still a battle, and to Amazon's credit, they eventually, understood the reasoning, and they gave us the opportunity to shoot on film. So, but it was important because I think, and the Neruda poem in the movie speaks to, and Austin as Henry has a great scene talking about what that Neruda poem means to him. The beautiful imperfections of Neruda's lover, right? And how he wants the real, he wants what's cracked and what's damaged, because there's beauty in that. And that's just how I felt like the movie had to look too. It had to look a little raw and a little rough around the edges, and yeah, and it's like, it's like a dying format in a lot of ways. And it was kind of like, this might be my only opportunity to get it done and shoot on it. So it just seemed like a perfect storm for that.
Yeah, I love the moodiness of it. And obviously that's with lighting as well, but you can tell there was something it felt differently. What's the origin story of this project actually being brought to you? I know I had something to do with it.
Well, in a way, because, if we hadn't made Southside, I wouldn't have been on Lili's radar as a filmmaker. And she read the book and wanted to portray Grace and wanted to somehow, bring the story to the screen. And so I read the book, and, like I said, I had, I'm not necessarily interested in adapting things, but I did know Lili's work from this movie, Miss Stevens in particular. And I thought she was great, and I had seen her in the pilot of Riverdale, but I hadn't seen any of but I knew from the pilot. I remember watching it with my dad, who was a big Archie fan, of course. So we're watching Archie comics, and we're watching this show that is nothing like the comic book. And he's like, "What the hell is this?" And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know, but that young lady is going to be a big star one day. And so I was very intrigued when she sent it, and I read it and felt this connection. What was the question again?
What was the origin? Did she call you?
Yeah. So it got sent to me, and then I went and I met her.
I'm gonna turn on my air conditioner. I'll be right back.
Go for it,
Austin. I went and met her in Vancouver, where she films the show, and I told her what I wanted to do, what I wanted the movie to be, and I. I had no idea how she was going to react, because I'm throwing out all kinds of obscure movie references, and some that weren't. We bonded a lot over Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and just the melancholy, underlying that whole movie. And Blue is the Warmest Color was another one. The rawness of that, and particularly the performances of the two leads in that movie. Just the way they kind of like slit their slit their wrists and bled for the camera. It was just so raw and beautiful. And so we vibed on what the vision was, and it really reminded me a lot of when we first sat down, together, and we talked about the then untitled, Barack and Michelle romance movie. Hadn't written the script yet, but I had this little outline for it, and your passion for it was what drove me. And similarly, walking out of that meeting with Lili, I went back to the hotel that I was staying at that night, and I started writing the script. We didn't even have the rights to the book yet.
Wow.
But it was just like I feel momentum with this now. Let's do it. And then so I finished the script. We got it to the author. She approved it, and we were off to the races from that point on. It was a very, very quick process. A lot quicker than
Southside.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad your second film was a bit quicker than that. What was it like, Austin, working with Lili? Like, how was it scene partner wise? How did you guys have time to hang out? I think you guys shot this in 24 days?
Yeah, we did. Did we do it in 24 days, Rich? We did it pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
So thankfully, well, I don't know. It was nice because we worked with each other a couple times before, so we've known each other for a while, and we were like about 15.
Oh, wow.
And like 18. So we had known each other for a bit of time. So there was just like an instant connection there and bond that we had since we were just like teenagers. So yeah, and of course there's, you go on a location and you want to spend as much time as possible together. But yeah, so there was already that connection. So then when it came to doing the scenes, it was fairly kind of just simple. There's already a bond there.
What was rehearsals like? Were you guys able to rehearse a lot? Did you guys have to rehearse a lot? Because it was a lot of just you two.
Yeah, did we? We went through this, we tried to go through the script. Did we do our...
Yeah, we sort of did lighter rehearsals. I took you guys to some of the locations.
Sure.
We sort of walked through things. We would get together, I would say almost every night, not quite every night, before the next day's filming and read through some scenes. You were more into that and talking about that type of stuff than Lili was, but she opened up to that process a lot as we went from prep into filming. I think started to really enjoy dissecting stuff and yeah.
Awesome. So Krystal Sutherland's book, Our Chemical Hearts, there's a huge following of it, right? But like me, I never read the book.
Yeah.
And like, what would you say to people who just, they don't know of it and they hear YA and they're like, okay, well, let me give this a chance. Like, what would you say that you brought to this kind of format, to this YA world that we are living in, that's maybe a bit different from what maybe some people are used to seeing? And do you have to know the book, and be...
Oh God, I hope not. In the sense that we haven't done our jobs if you have to have read the book,
right,
to really connect to the movie. And I haven't talked to anybody yet. Actually, maybe one journalist who was a big fan of the book and was also into the movie. But I'm very curious to see, how fans of the book react, because it's quite different in a lot of ways. I think it bottles up the spirit of some of the fundamentals of the book, and it more or less, and tell me if I'm wrong here, Austin, but it more or less follows the trajectory of the story. But it does elide a lot of subplots and a lot of other characters in favor of just narrowing in on the roller coaster between Henry and Grace. But I think you asked a really good question about the proliferation of the YA label. It's funny because if you see the trailer for it or any promotions, you're gonna get the sense that it's a YA romance movie. You might also get a little whiff of coming of age and mystery, and I think it is a grab bag of all of those things. But the element that's not really hinted at is sort of what I was talking about in the beginning, that undercurrent of melancholy and mortality. And I think that it's those somber themes and those tonalities that drew me to the material. And ironically, they've been, removed from the marketing campaign, but I guess that's a wise decision because the film's success is contingent on reaching that, that young adult audience. And I don't know. I think YA is a really dubious label. It's like it's seen its stock rise since Hollywood hit pay dirt with adaptations of Nicholas Sparks and John Green, and I actually am not. I haven't seen a lot of them. Austin was the star.
Hey man, what are you saying?
I haven't seen it.
Hey man,
I'm not even talking shit about those movies. As a fact, the industry has been churning out kind of an endless supply of imitations and ripoffs of those kinds of novels. And what I think is interesting is that if you go back to the 90s and the early 2000s when I was a teenager, movies like Rushmore or Boys in the Hood or Better Luck Tomorrow or Ghost World, what they have in common with more recent movies like The Hate You Give or The Miseducation of Cameron Post and Perks of Being a Wallflower is that they're all great movies that just happen to be about teenage characters. Yeah. But like the older movies that I mentioned, they're allowed to be a coming-of-age film, or in Better Luck Tomorrow's case, a crime parable, or in Ghost World's case, a satire. But the newer ones, are all just sort of confined to young adult,
Right. They're put in a box when really it's like that's what I think I really loved about your film is it was like, it turned, even though it's all those things, but it didn't feel like I had to be of this age to get it, or that I was like rolling my eyes like, yeah, okay, that's not what it is like, or you're a creeper, or like, this is weird. It literally felt like, I think one of the themes that I got that hit me was that feeling. And I think everybody has felt this, of someone not wanting you back. Oh, sorry, I hit something.
Right.
That was me. The theme of like someone not wanting you back, right? And you wanting something so badly, and they just can't give you what they don't have, right?
Right. What a beautiful way to put it. Yeah.
And I'm really interested, Austin, in how did you balance the act of like not being desperate, but also there wasn't a desperate, because it could have totally felt like, I want you so bad, but there was like this balance of like wanting something and not fully understanding the thing you actually want, but also like this innocence about you, right? So like what played into like you balancing like, I'm really like one of my favorite scenes actually, and I think it's one of the best ways I've seen a love scene actually executed, was the awkwardness of it, but also the don't try to act like you know what you're doing. And it was just like lights out, and I was like, yes, like we're all trying to be this thing that we're not, and that we have no idea about, especially in whether it's the high school world or whatever. But I love that it was something that even I could understand. So I think my question for you, Austin, is that balancing act of not being desperate, but there's an innocence to it, and there was a loveliness and balance of how you played this, and I just want to understand, how did you get there?
Yeah, that is a good question. I feel, I don't know, it's a fairly like difficult thing to like aim for those specific things, and then also to have them like come true or be realized. Because yeah, you're right. Like they all are fairly different, like subtle aspects. I feel like, although essentially what I try to do best is just represent the character like as best as possible, and just be as honest in that way. And I suppose like whatever came out of that was what happened to come out of that.
I love that. No,
Yeah,
I love
in
that.
terms of like aiming for those certain things, like, I don't know, to try and have like a desired outcome, that's just like a tricky thing. And also I don't think you necessarily even get that like desired outcome most of the time. And also, like, you know, I feel like just trying to not judge Henry as much as possible and just looking for what's honestly going on at the moment, and letting him be a bad person if he happens to be a bad person or selfish. But yeah, in terms of just those goals, I'm not really sure I like
Well, I think
have those in mind to try and like seek out specifically. But that doesn't mean that I'm still like, I'm happy about what you're saying.
Well, I think you hit it on the head where you said something like just being, right? Because I think you guys, that's a lot of the themes, like literally let's just be, which actually turns me to one of my other favorite characters who plays your best friend.
Yeah.
I know that it was a small part of the film, but what's her name?
Cara Young. La's the character, but Cara's the actress.
First of all, I was like, where have I seen her? And I'm like, I was obsessed with her in MTV Girl Code. And so she was hilarious. She's hilarious, but like her, even every moment that she was on screen with you, even your man,
Yeah.
like it felt like I knew you guys way longer than, it felt like, okay, well, what else about them? Like, I want to know more about them as well. Like, it felt so, and when I say lived in, I just mean like, it just feels like you guys were friends and like you guys were like this, even the way you guys were holding on to each other. And it wasn't like very long moments, but when they were there, it was like, they almost like filled in the rest of the part of Henry's life, right?
Yeah.
And so how, Richard, Austin, you guys can both answer this. How did that happen? Like that sense of, and I love that you guys, put in a lesbian, I think a lesbian is in the book as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. But I love that you get to see this relationship of somebody trying to figure out their own sexuality as well. And, but I love the friendship, right? I love the friendship so much. So can you guys talk about that and how you guys, I felt like, made a complete meal out of those scenes, even though they were smaller at times?
You want to go, Rich?
Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but I'll just say.
Yeah, without spoil. I'm sorry, guys. I'm acting like
no. Nothing you said spoiled anything.
Okay.
What I was going to use as an example would have spoiled something, but I think the way that I can best describe how Austin and Cara, who is an amazing actress and doing big things in the New York theater scene. She first of all, Austin was adamant that he get every single co-star's number or email so that he could contact them before the shoot, get to know them, be comfortable, and talk about stuff. Some people were open to it, some less so. Cara was. He wanted to spend time with her, and there was definitely a familiarity by the time we were shooting their first scenes together. But I just noticed that Austin was very, very open to. Well, first of all, Cara improvises a lot, and I, absolutely let that happen, and and she contributed so much. Like, I'll digress for 1 second. Cara came in and auditioned for the part, and it was clear that she was La. Then another actress came in whose name is Coral Pena, also auditioning for the same part, and she was fantastic, but La was Kara. But Coral was so good, and I felt like the two of them would have such a good chemistry that I actually wrote a new part for Coral as the love interest to La. And so I worked very closely with the two of them, and there's, you know, unfortunately some scenes that I had to take out for pacing structure, but we worked to make them really three-dimensional characters in their, you know, in their own rights, and in their limited screen time. But so there was a lot of improv that then I would rework and put into the script officially. But so you have Kara on the one hand improving verbally, but Austin, and I don't even know that you do this, maybe you do, you kind of improv physically. Every take, you're bringing a new physicality to the scene, even if the reading or the rendering is more or less the same. There are slight differences to the way you'll walk into the room or where your hand will go. And so one example is just like, there's a scene between him and Kara and CJ Hoff, who plays the third friend Muzz, and they're sitting on the school bus, and they're talking about the predicament that Henry is in with Grace. And the take of the scene I ended up going with was one where they're like leaning on each other. Like, I think Henry has his arm around La, and she's like leaning her head on his shoulder. Now it's not there the first 3 or 4 takes we did. But Austin was like lazy at that point. We were in a really hot bus. He was sweating and kind of tired. And I'm thinking, I don't know this for sure, but I speculate that, and they all were actually really tired, but I speculate that you're like, well, fuck, we're on a bus. I would be on this hot-ass bus in real life anyway. I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to lean into being tired and leaning on my friend. And she did the same thing. And so that willingness and that openness to improvise and try new things, I think led to like a real verisimilitude and connection between them.
Yeah, probably. I don't know how deep the thought process was for me in that moment.
He's like, I'm tired.
Yeah, I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I think what I'll say is like, Kara's wonderful, and like, you know, sometimes you just happen to have that connection with a person you're working with, and other times you don't, and you try to do your best. But thankfully with her, like, we did have a fairly like instant connection. And so, yeah, no, and I'm like very glad that was then able to be, that everyone gets to see that when they watch the movie, even though, like, you're right, it is in fairly small moments. But I'm very happy because it is able to like portray something deeper and like portray our relationship. And like, just so you know, like, you can hopefully tell that there's something, just to be able to tell their relationship and what their relationship's like and how deep it is through those small moments. But yeah, with her and I, just thankfully, there was just sort of an instant connection there that is fairly difficult to fabricate, I guess, if it's not there.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching you guys on screen. It was so lovely. Can you talk about Richard? Maybe talk about one of our favorite composers who also worked on Southside, and some of the people you brought over to this film, and really creating the lighting, the tone, the feel with the composition of the music and the clothing. Can you talk about some of those people that you brought over and how they impacted and influenced the movie?
Yeah, totally. So Stephen James Taylor, who scored our film, and was a composer that I sort of stole from Charles Burnett, who Stephen's been doing scores for his movies since To Sleep with Anger in 1991. I had such a great working relationship with him on Southside that we just became friends. We've become close friends, and there have been a couple of other projects that were very musically oriented that I've been developing, and he's been with me from the ground up, reading the script, and I go to his studio, and he does everything. He's a one-man band in this studio that he has. And what's great about Steven is that he is a collector of unusual and obscure instruments, and in some cases only one-of-a-kind instruments. And so you're never going to get a typical sound with his music. And I don't like typical scores. I like something that has something a bit different. And what we did on Southside was we had an instrument for Barack, we had an instrument for Michelle, and the instrument that he used for Michelle was a Transcendello, which is kind of it's kind of an electric. It's a one-of-a-kind, custom-made electric harp, basically, or electric cello, and we used that again in this film, and we also used an electric guitar again in this film, and they're kind of dueling with each other. So in a very weird way, the scores complement each other if you were to listen to the scores back to back. What we were going for was to kind of have a garage band aesthetic, like an electric guitar high school band aesthetic for Henry, that kind of gets kidnapped, and this is all really like highfalutin, but like gets kidnapped and like stretched out into this cosmic transcendent feeling that's where the Transcendello comes in, and some of the more like emo music vibes. So that's really, we did a lot of, Southside was easy. He knew exactly what I was looking for, and then brought me something even better. And it was just like, okay, great, we're putting it in, done. This was a longer process. It was something that we did a lot of different drafts of. We didn't quite find it until about a month before we totally locked the movie. And that's okay. That's what it takes sometimes. I also brought over Lucio Sexis, the production designer of Southside. And what can you say about Lucio? He knows how to create beautiful sets, cohesive sets, without the resources that he deserves. He built us a abandoned factory and a literal koi pond in this warehouse space.
It was beautiful, by the way. I was like, what was that? So he built that wasn't there.
He built that inside of a warehouse that gets rented out to film crews and events in Paterson, New Jersey. And the exterior of them walking in is also one of those abandoned buildings that is owned by this company, which again rents out to film production. So, but everything in there is totally fabricated. Well,
that was beautiful. And also the clothes, like, obviously told a story for Lili's character, Grace. The oversized, baggy men's clothes, and also all of the friends, like, they had their own. It was a very strong point of view from each character, so it was beautifully done. The next question: how did what is it? Is it Jamie O'Brien?
Jamin O'Brien.
Jamin O'Brien and Alex Sachs.
Alex Sachs, yeah.
Yeah, how did that happen? What was that process like?
Yeah,
and when did Amazon come on board? Like, how did this all kind of cosmically happen?
Yeah, so wrote the script, and then my lawyer introduced me to Alex, who is a client of hers as well. I was looking for somebody that I could kind of team up with, before setting it up. Just somebody that had my back and, understood what I was trying to do. I also had Lili as an executive producer. And we pitched around, and Amazon, within a couple months from writing the script, and Amazon decided to do it. And because Lili's window was so tight, she had to go back to Riverdale. at some point that summer. Basically, we got 15 days with her out of a 24-day shoot, and she's in almost every scene. So we had this very short window. I didn't want to wait another year, to make it. Things can change. You never know what happens. So Amazon, God bless them, they pre-greenlit the movie off that draft. And it was just like we were in prep before the contracts were even fully signed. And Jamin was a unit production manager, an executive producer. He's New York based, and he was very helpful. Austin was somebody that I was thinking about while I was writing it. I'd seen him in Brad Status with Ben Stiller, Mike White's movie, and thought he was incredible.
Thanks, man.
And luckily, it was lucky, he decided to send in an audition tape. I didn't even think we were going to get him to audition. I thought we were just I don't know.
No, I've done so much already. I love it. I love that you did that.
I thought we were going to have to straight offer it, and then this audition tape came in, and then my opinion was sort of like, why are we auditioning anybody else? Like, can we just give him the part? And the powers that be, they just want to make sure everything is cool. So they had him come in and read with Lili, and it was like, okay, done.
Yeah.
And it does help that they liked each other, they knew each other, they had a little bit of a friends history together. It really makes the same thing with you and Parker. Like for people to like each other when they're working together makes such a difference.
Woo! Because we know when it doesn't happen.
Right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think like the last question is, how would you describe this film, like both of you guys? Just for people who are new to this genre, or just want them to see the film. Like, what would you say to them about it? What's it about?
I'll let you.
Let me.
It doesn't have to be a long drive. It could just, what are you excited for them to see about it?
It's like, how much can I say? You know what I mean? Like, are people like, yeah.
Just say it. Doesn't matter.
Because it's kind of, I mean, I'm excited. I am interested in the idea that we go into in this movie, just like attempting to fix someone and wanting to fix them. And I think learning that people need to work on themselves at their own pace, and it takes time. And to me, that I feel like is very interesting, because I feel like hopefully, if there is, I suppose, a teenager that is beginning relationships or having their first relationships, I think that sometimes can be something that you have to learn, in terms of like fixing, not just necessarily just fixing someone, but also changing someone. Because Henry is, I think, trying to change Grace into the person that she was before. And I think a lot of times when you sometimes in the beginning of relationships, maybe you're trying to change certain things about them. And, if you change this one thing, then you'll both be more compatible, or the relationship will be better, or that person would be perfect. And I think hopefully this movie displays that that doesn't necessarily work very well.
And who knows if you would have liked them before, too.
What?
I said, and who knows if you would have actually liked them before.
Oh, yeah, no, totally, yeah. And then, definitely. I don't, I don't know if I would have. I mean, I never really, or I don't know if Henry would have. Henry never really meets that person. I mean, he sees like pictures of her and hears stories about her, kind of like a ghost or someone. I mean, someone that like that's just a completely different person, than the Grace that you see in the movie. No, that's totally up for debate. Yeah, who knows if you would have even liked who Grace was before. So yeah, no, it's a good question.
Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say too much better than that. I think I just have a trite little soundbite, which is that for me, it's kind of about the pain and beauty of being young and the darkness and the lightness in their lives, and not just with their love, but of their lives in general and life in general, the ebbs and the flows and the transitions and the hardships, yeah, that's it. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And life will go on.
Life goes on.
Yeah.
You pick up the pieces. Yeah.
Yeah, and life will go on. And so this comes out August 21st?
Yeah, this Friday, August 21st.
This Friday on Amazon. And so I'm super excited for everyone to see your second film. And Austin, congrats on all your success. And
you too.
Thank you on all your success. And I'm excited for everybody to see it because it's really good. It's beautiful. The writing, I was like, okay, Tika, you're not going to stop and write that line down because I would not get through the film. But there were just so many like, oh, yes, So it was just beautiful, beautifully written, beautifully shot, beautifully acted. So make sure you tell Lili. I'm sure she'll see this. You were fantastic in it, and it was nice to see a different side of her as well. And playing Grace. So thanks for hanging out with me, guys.
Well, before we go, I got to throw some love back your way because we're so grateful that you took the time to do this. You're one of the busiest actresses in town right now. Sonic the Hedgehog, Sugar Berry. Everyone needs to go check that out for your mom, especially. And the movie that you just set up at HBO Max. You're killing it out there.
Yeah.
And you're producing and writing and acting, and I'm so happy to see you thriving.
I love you. I'm always here. Pick up the phone. I'm here. So,
Right.
Thanks so much. This is like a love fest.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tika, thank you for doing this.
Of course, Austin. No problem. It's a pleasure. I'm so happy I got to meet you.
I'm happy. Hopefully someday we'll get to meet and
yes, and hopefully work together. Who knows, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. All right, Amazon. Thanks for hanging out, and thanks for asking me to do this. Bye.